In the beginning of this week's Parsha, the Torah relates how Hashem appears to Avram Avinu. This is soon after the Bris Milah. And Avram is sitting at the door of the tent. He lifts his eyes and he sees three people standing there, who we know, of course, are the three Malachim. And he runs towards them. And then the pasuk says, Vayoymar Adonai imno motzasi chen beinecho al nosaver me'al avdecho. It is the second word of this pasuk that sounds like Hashem's name, which we're going to be discussing whether in fact it is Hashem's name. The pasuk says, Avram said, Vayoymar, he says, we'll refer to this word, Adnai, and he says, if I find favor in your eyes, please don't pass by. And then the pasuk continues by saying, take some water, wash your feet, have some bread, etc. So Rashi on these words, Vayomer Adnai, etc., Rashi says that Avram Avinu was speaking to the leader of amongst this group of people, or Malachim, but he's calling them all Adonim, he's calling them all my masters. And it is to the leader that he says, Al nosaver, you please don't pass by, don't continue going, and if you won't continue going, then your friends will stay along with you. Rashi says if we interpret it in this way, then the word Adnai over here was an expression of choil. It's not referring to Hashem. It's not a word of kodesh. It's referring to my masters. The first question that Rebbe asks is, if Rashi says that he's only speaking to Godel Shebehem, to the leader of them, then why does Rashi say that he's calling them all my masters? The Rebbe now continues with the next part of the Rashi. Rashi says, Dover Acher, another interpretation. Koideshu, it's actually an expression of holiness. It's a holy word. It's referring to Hashem's holy name. And Avram Avinu is actually speaking to Hashem and saying to Hashem to please wait until he goes and calls, invites the guests in. And Rashi goes on and says that even though this pasuk of Vayoymar, that he's speaking to Hashem, according to this pirush, says after the pasuk that he already is running towards the guest, and why does it say it now? So Rashi says this is the style of psukim. It might sometimes say it a little bit out of the order that it actually happens. So the Rebbe asks, number one, why does Rashi need to have two interpretations on the pasuk? Number two, why is Rashi saying the pirush, the explanation that it's choil, that it just means my masters and it's referring to the malachim? Why is Rashi bringing that as the first pirush, seemingly the main pirush, where in most psukim and in most places the name Adnai is referring to Hashem, so seemingly that would be more fitting to Pshutei Shal Mikra. And finally, says the Rebbe, why is it that in the first interpretation, Rashi first explained how it's referring to the malachim, etc., and then finishes off by saying that according to this it's choil? Whereas in the second pirush, Rashi starts off immediately saying, and another explanation is that it's kodesh, and then he explains how it can be referring to Hashem. Rashi then goes on and says that both of these explanations are both in Bereshis Rabbah. And the Rebbe asks, number one, why is it relevant to know the source? Rashi usually doesn't quote the source. Number two, why does Rashi say the source only at the end? Usually Rashi will give the source in the beginning. And number three, in the Bereshis Rabbah and Medrash Rabbah in front of us, the way it is, in other words, in our prints, we only have one of these explanations, the one that it is choil, Rashi's first explanation. So we must say Rashi had some other version of the Bereshis Rabbah. But the question is, both of these pirushim are both brought in the Gemara. So why doesn't Rashi just simply bring it from the Gemara? The explanation of all of this, says the Rebbe, is when we follow the psukim, and we see that the very next pasuk, after saying that Avram says, Adnai imno motzasi chen beinecha, please do not pass, etc., the pasuk continue without another vayomer, without another statement from Avram. It says, Yukach nomat mayim, please take some water, wash your feet, and have some bread, etc. Now clearly this is being said to these people or malachim, not to Hashem. And since it's in one continuation from that first Vayoymar, without another Vayomer in between, so the simple pshat would then be that obviously this whole statement is all being said to these people, rather than to Hashem. And that's why Rashi is accepting this as the first main pirush. And furthermore, he only says at the very end that according to this it would be choil. it would be, in other words, in this Pirush, it would be not Hashem's name, but Choil. But the question then becomes, and this is why Rashi has to elaborate, the question becomes, if he's speaking to the three people, then why does it start B'Loshen Yochid? Im no motzasi chen beinecha, al nosavor me alavdecha. This is all in singular, not in plural if he's speaking to three people. That's why Rashi says that in fact, this opening statement is only to the leader of amongst them. But if that's the case, that would seem to be a little bit inappropriate. And why is he only turning to one of them? So Rashi says that in truth is he first does address all of them. By that word Adnai, he's referring to all of them as masters. But practically the whole statement he's only saying to the leader. And since Avram wants all of them to stay, not only the leader, so why is he saying it in the singular al nosa avoir? And that's why Rashi continues and says, if the leader doesn't leave, then his friends will stay along with him. The problem, however, is, bottom line is, if he really wants them all to stay, why isn't he speaking to all of them directly? And that's why Rashi comes and gives a second Pirush, and says that according to the second Pirush, the word Adnai over here is actually a holy word, a holy name of Hashem, and speaking to Hashem. But this Pirush is only brought second because we have bigger problems with the second Pirush. So, first of all, it doesn't say again Vayomer, so we said it sounds like this whole long continuation of the next part is speaking to the three people. The first pasuk should also be is speaking to them. And also, it doesn't really sound right that if Hashem is there with him, he's telling Hashem that please wait until I go and deal with these guests. And that's why Rashi only brings this as a second Pirush. And this again explains why Rashi says those words that in the first Pirush he only says at the end that according to this Pirush it is Choil, it's not a holy name. Whereas in the second Pirush he starts off with immediately saying that there's another pshat that it's Kodesh, because I said before in the simple reading of the Psukim, it does seem like he's speaking to the Malachim. Rashi is just explaining, the main point Rashi was explaining was that he's speaking to the leader of the Malachim. But since the bottom line is it's still not so smooth, this term Adnai, because bottom line is usually that does refer to Hashem, that's why Rashi does have to say at the end that according to this, Adnai is actually a Lashon Choil. Whereas in the second Pirush, Rashi starts immediately with the fact that the next Pirush is going to be that it's Kodesh. Number one, because that's going to be the main chidush of this second Pirush, that despite the fact that it seems like he's speaking to Malachim, it's actually a holy name, it's a name of Hashem. And number two, it is this point that's really going to be the proof that he's speaking to Hashem, because it uses that term Adnai, because it's Hashem Kodesh. Now that's what we could explain, that he's speaking to Hashem and asking Hashem to wait, etc., etc. But since bottom line is both of these Pirushim are not so smooth, not so pshutei shel mikra, therefore Rashi has to tell us, and at the end of it, once we learn both Pirushim, Rashi tells us they're both from Bereishis Rabbah, in other words from Medrash, it's not really mamish pshutei shel mikra. And Rashi, in fact, specifically quotes the Medrash and not the Gemara, because in the Gemara we do have many psukim being interpreted in a way of pshat, but Rashi wants to emphasize that it's not mamish pshuta shel mikra, and that's why he finishes off by saying and quoting specifically that both lashonis, both explanations are coming from the Medrash.